let's talk about a few of the good sources of protein that you could be consuming for yourself on a daily basis. So we're going to start with plant-based, and this is only because a lot of people don't realize the sheer amount of plant-based proteins that are out there. So one of the great ones that you can do is anything with whole grains. Whole grains typically has a little bit more protein in it. So this could be something like oats, could be whole wheat bread. It could be some cereals. I know like shredded wheat, for example, some of those bran ones, they have a little bit of extra protein. Pastas, some of those whole wheat pastas have some protein. The main thing I want you to realize though for these whole grain pastas, they do have some good protein in it, but usually it's going to be the ones with 100% whole grain. If you get something that has honey wheat, for example, or enriched wheat, white wheat bread, it's kind of redundant, but that actually exists. It's not going to have as much protein as that actual whole wheat, 100% whole wheat. And I always go towards 100% whole wheat because it also has some fiber and some other good things in it too. Fiber is for a different discussion, but just generally speaking, those are some good ideas. Just make sure they're 100% whole wheat. On top of that, we can lean towards some nuts and seeds. This has a little bit of protein, not a lot for the overall amount of calories. And I should also say, generally speaking, plant-based protein does not have quite as much protein per calorie as compared to animal protein. So that's just something to be said. A serving of, let's say, peanut butter, for example, has about 7 grams of protein per 200 calories. If you had 200 calories of chicken breast, you're almost getting, I'd say, 40, maybe even 50 grams of protein. So that's kind of one of the bad things about plant protein. But with that said, nuts and seeds, you can have almonds, peanuts. These can all be done in nut butters too. That's a great source. Otherwise, you can just pop them in your mouth plain. Chia seeds are another really good example of a seed that is actually fairly decently high in protein. It's also got some good fiber too. Soy is probably one of the best sources of plant-based protein that people can be taking, simply because it's so bioavailable. Not bioavailable, available. We'll talk about bioavailability in a second, but it's very available and it's actually fairly high protein for the overall calories it has. So this could be something like soybeans, soy milk, tofu, tempeh, I think is another one. But these all can be used in basically any person's diet. And a lot of people like cooking with tofu because it can kind of mask and go with the flavors of whatever you're cooking with. So if you're cooking some vegetables and you cook tofu with it, it's a great thing because it actually kind of takes over the flavors of the vegetables. So it's just something, again, another tool in your tool belt that you can use. And you can do some of these too if you do like more plant, eating more animal-based proteins, I should say. You can try sticking in some of these other ones as well. On top of that, I also really love soy milk. People kind of dog on soy all the time, but soy milk's really, really tasty in my opinion. And it also has pretty good protein per calorie ratio. There are some trace amounts of protein in vegetables, but I don't feel like there's enough to really go down that rabbit hole and talk about it. But another really good one too, beans and legumes. So this is like peas, black beans, navy beans, basically any type of beans. And when you're thinking of peas too, a lot of people are like, peas, man, that's interesting. Yeah, peas actually have a really good protein ratio. And we'll talk about kind of the pros and cons of what plant protein can give you versus animal protein in a second. That's going to be in the next portion of this podcast. But those are just a few of the great vegetable-based or plant-based proteins. And now we need to discuss some animal-based ones. And I did these secondary mainly because a lot of people already kind of know these. They're familiar with them. But I think it should just be reiterated as well, all the different options. So eggs are a great source of animal-based protein. You can have chicken, beef, pork, milk, cheese, fish, any type of dairy is going to have some decent overall protein content as well, and that would kind of be on the side of vegetarian. That's not plant-based, but if you're somebody who's vegetarian, you might be leaning to some of those dairy options. The big distinction I do want to make with these animal-based products is to try to go for stuff that's kind of lower in overall saturated fat, because that saturated fat can have some potential issues on your overall blood work, such as increasing LDL, which can increase the chances of heart attacks, heart disease, etc. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in the next section. If you are somebody who struggles with getting kind of these normal whole food sources of protein, though, there are some supplements out there. Protein powders are a great example, specifically whey protein. Protein bars are very handy. Also, there's lots of vegan and vegetarian alternatives too. So there's pea plant protein. I think rice protein exists now. That's like in protein powders, and there's also all types of vegan protein bars, protein pizzas, literally so many different things that are both vegan or plant-based, and then also animal-based as well. So many different things out there. Getting enough protein in your day-to-day life nowadays is so much easier. Some things I did want to tag is maybe not being completely worth it though, is collagen, peptides, and amino acids. These are kind of a waste of money for the most part. The research isn't really backing them super well. And here's the big thing about all these. Amino acids, as we discussed, is literally stuff that goes into peptides. It goes into protein. So if you're buying amino acids, you're literally buying protein that's already broken down. So you might as well just spend the money on getting actual protein that has all of the amino acids already in it, plus the satiety effects, plus all the other just good things about protein being tasty too. Collagen, don't waste your money. All these things, the science isn't really backing on it. So hopefully those gave you a few different good ideas